Welcome to From the Valley podcast. I'm your host, Tim Wilshire, Brisbane Business Life. We've got episode number 61 here with a long time, or he might be a bit of a listener of the podcast, Pras Puri. Pras, welcome along to the podcast.
Thanks, Tim. How are you going today?
Yeah, very, very good. So, Pras, just a bit of a background information to the listeners here. You what I know most about you sort of work in what I consider a fairly freelance type of role over the years, but you're assisting medium and large companies in various sort of engineering projects, change management, culture, that type of thing. Is that a fairly accurate reflection of what you're doing?
Good way to sum it up. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. A bit about the origins, where you came from and that sort of thing. I mean, I've had a bit of a look up. I know that Pras is, I think that name comes from a French background, the actual name itself. The surname obviously is Indian, I think. Is that correct?
That's correct, Tim, but I'd like to keep it a little bit of a mystery if you don't mind, because I think putting a bit of perspective around, my background and how my career has turned out, and, when we came to meet each other as well.
Yeah.
But, first of all, I'd probably say, thank you for having me on your podcast.
Excellent. No worries at all. So, whereabouts did you grow up, and what was early life like for you?
Early life for me was I grew up in New Zealand.
New Zealand? So you're born in New Zealand?
Born in Wellington, actually.
Wow.
And,
yes.
from, there, my folks decided that we would go to Germany for a year. Didn't really have too much of a say in it, but ended up in Germany. And
Germany. So what part of Germany?
In Munich, actually, yeah. So I travelled down a little bit as a kid. And I suppose, for myself, it's interesting I find myself here because after I was in Germany, my parents decided to move to Brisbane, and I've really come to love Brisbane.
Yes.
I did my primary schooling here, and then I ended up doing my high schooling here as well. Now, my father, he's an academic, and he worked at University of Queensland for quite some time. So I suppose early life for myself and I've got two sisters, a younger one and an older one.
So you're the middle person.
Yeah, middle child syndrome going on. But it's, early life was part of a very studious and academic focused family. So, I suppose growing up here in Brisbane, I spent as much time as I could outdoors, or that was my preference. But the pressure was definitely on in terms of achieving academically.
Yep.
So, I think probably continuing on with my early life, I think around about high school, I developed a bit of an interest in asking some of the deeper questions in life and developed a bit of a fascination with philosophy.
Yes.
I think nowadays, as a result of that, I definitely enjoy some reading. I definitely enjoy a bit of travelling, but I tend to find that a lot of it just actually happens for the sake of work. But one of my major passions at the moment, Tim, is for about the last 8 years I've been writing a book. And
so the same book in the last 8 years?
Yeah, the same book. It's been a very large project, and it is a general theory on philosophical consciousness.
So tell us about philosophical consciousness.
Well, I mean, I think, I suppose, to give the story a little bit of a background.
Yes.
Back when I was in high school, I was asking a fair few questions, as, I think you tend to do in your adolescent years.
Yes.
But I was always a student who was involved heavily in, the science, maths, physics kind of subjects.
Yep.
I kind of found myself there because I didn't know what else to do. I moved from there to doing uni at QUT, Guidance Point. And,
great campus.
Yeah, great campus. I think it was my first time that I was really integrated well into the city as well. And it really can change your perspective when you've grown up in the suburbs and you go and you move into the city. I moved out of home and I started living in the Valley, funnily enough.
Yes,
right?
yep.
Home of the podcast. And, but, I was doing my engineering study at the time as well. So I developed this way of looking at things, which is you always have to be able to trace it back to first principles. I think that's what you learn in engineering study, really, that you have to have a good basis for what you're doing. So things were going pretty well. I got my first job with a engineering procurement construction management company, EPCM, Bechtel. They're quite big, and from there I was moved to a next job with Rio Tinto, and then I moved on to this other company called Arrow Energy in the gas industry, just to give you a little bit of context around my career. But happy-go-lucky, good kind of life going on. And then I found myself in a situation where I became incredibly ill.
So what sort of you had? When was this? How long ago was
So
it?
this would have been about almost 10 years ago now. Yeah,
Okay,
almost
so
10 years
about
ago.
a decade. Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not going to go into the details of what it was, but
Okay.
at one point I was given 6 months to live. And, you know,
So terminal diagnosis.
yeah, and, you know, it was a whole year that I was out of things. I suppose the reason it's so relevant to where I am today and
Yeah.
how I've gotten here is that, you know, these experiences really changed the way that I looked at the world, how I find a method to survive, and, you know, it really helped me in terms of development of this philosophy. And, you know, so I think that's really what led me to writing this book. And, you know, I think... would you like to hear a little bit more about the book?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here to talk about
Absolutely.
that amongst other things. Yeah.
I mean, I can talk about the engineering work as well, but
Yeah.
I think it all really ties together for myself.
Yep.
So, philosophy, of course, you know, the main thing or the main challenge is that we're all trying to answer that hard question, which is, you know, what's the meaning of life? And it can be quite broad, but I think the scientific approach I'm tending to take to it is that I don't like to get the confusion happening between meaning and purpose. So instead, I am trying to answer this question, which is why consciousness? And hence you come back to philosophical consciousness, this concept. So what I've been doing is I've been writing about consciousness and philosophy from a first principles point of view. I'm trying to write out what I've got in terms of my knowledge and what I've gathered over the years in an empathizable format. So I'm actually writing a non-fiction book in the form of a non-fiction novel. And I found that what that's done in the past is it's allowed people to empathize with the content. Because you know the difference between when someone tells you something, and I'm sure we experience this a lot in terms of education. Someone tells you something and they say, now you know this. And there's a big difference between that and actually understanding it and being able to apply it in your day-to-day life.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
I chose this format, and from there, you know, I think one thing that really occurred to me in terms of philosophy as well is that it's all about how the reader is able to understand it. So it has to come at the pace that the reader wants. So you're a fan of TED Talks?
I mean, I obviously seen a few TED Talks. I'm not sort of... I mean, so many things consume your life that it's something I haven't really got into like a lot of other people, like maybe yourself. But yeah, I do know some people that are obviously that are TED talkers,
I find
TEDx
that
talkers as well.
I like the concept. I think it's a great, concise way to get the information forward. But to really absorb it, I do find that the pace has to be set by the person who's consuming the information. So I chose a novel because I found the written form is something that you can pick up and take in either one chapter, or you can take in 5 or 10 at a time. The breakdown that I've used in this book is I've actually got 195 chapters at the moment. And
hang on. 100, not 195 pages.
195 chapters.
195 chapters. How big does that make the book, Pras?
I'm trying very hard to limit it, but it is a very large topic to cover. So I've got it down to around about 800 pages now in paperback, which, you know, the aim is still to reduce it, but I've had to learn a lot about how to write well as well. So it kind of puts you in this point where you got to go and say, only keep information in if it's relevant. The main thing that's relevant in terms of explaining philosophy is the people, their experiences that they're going through, how they change over time, and, you know, what their desires are, what they're managing to do. Eventually it all comes together. So
I guess with the book, I mean, how far away do you think you are from getting it to the publisher?
Well, I would hope that I can get it done in another couple of years, which would hit me on the real 10-year mark that I've been working on it. But I think the challenge isn't in putting the content down. The challenge is in making the content understandable and making it entertaining enough that it can actually be consumed.
So there's some entertainment value in there as well as some I guess, your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to hope so. I suppose, you know, getting back to the concept of what it is, you know, so there's this question, this meaning of life question, and I'm trying to answer it more from a why consciousness. And people usually end up going down one of two paths. One is they go and say, okay, we believe we can answer this question. The truth is that it's a paradox. It's not a direct, this is what you go and do now. So there's two paths you can go down. I suppose this depends on people's background. They can either go and say, I'm going to take a spiritual pathway, or I'm going to take a scientific pathway.
Yeah.
So I suppose you can guess which one I was trying to take as an engineer.
Yeah.
But I mean, the way that the question is actually answered then, or the paradox is answered, I should say, is that there's some foundations laid down. One is in terms of what conscious experience is. The next one is in terms of what chaos is and how chaos can relate back to our lives on a daily basis. And the last one is of coexistence. So whilst these concepts, seem like they're disconnected, when they're combined together in the right way, like I said, it can be understood. It's not something that, if we could put it down into a 10-page thesis, then that would have, I believe, already been done.
Yep.
So
So just on this, I mean, I know you're an honest student coming out of QUT, but did you ever? I mean, this to me sounds like it's really a PhD material type analysis. Putting your own spin out there. What, have you ever sort of thought about doing a PhD?
I don't believe I have actually done enough prior reading, and there's a conscious decision behind that as well, actually, Tim, which is that when you're trying to approach such a large topic and you're trying to set up a new framework, the more previous knowledge you bring into it, the more difficult it becomes for your readers to be able to grasp it, until you end up with something which is hugely academic, and you write out a PhD
it's not aimed to be completely academic, is it?
And the one person who reads it is your supervisor. Yeah. And that's the end of it,
Yeah. No, I understood.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
So, I mean, I think in terms...
This is the way it sort of... My mind sort of works when I'm hearing that, how much has sort of been put into this and what you're sort of finding out and what you're sort of bringing to the table. It does, to me, it just seems fairly much of a way of bringing out some I don't know if there's obviously research involved as well, but it seems to be going along that line a little bit, but then you're sort of steering me and saying no, it's not. It's
because I think one of the challenges with philosophy and why it's not as relevant today as it was 100 years ago is the applicability. I mean, we live in a science-based world, so whatever we bring out theoretically from research into philosophy should be something which can actually help us alter and change our day-to-day lives. I think the thing for myself, Tim, is that once I'd laid down these foundations and being able to provide this answer of how you resolve this paradox, what's actually going on is there's a significant amount of neuroplastic change the brain can go through. And by understanding this information, I do believe that the brain actually changes. And it allows you to see things differently. And it's not just a change in perspective as much as it is a functional change in the way the brain operates. I often get asked, though, all right, Pras, that's great, but what's the benefit? And the difficult thing about explaining something which is quite different to how we're used to perceiving consciousness is that it's more like saying, okay, you feel a sense of peace. And peace is not a positive or a negative, it's just a state. I think the important thing about getting through this process for myself is that you end up with something which is not an arbitrary, airy-fairy kind of, I feel this way today because I've read this book. It's something which is repeatable. It is something which is testable. But to do that, you need to have a big enough group of your peers who you can actually test this against. So I think from a purely scientific point of view, what I'm theorizing is that, there is multidimensional space, and our consciousness allows us to consume several dimensions of that, but not the whole picture. And this theory kind of helps tie it all together. It provides a framework. Still, like you said, the reason I haven't gone down a completely academic pathway here is that, you have to bring this back to being something which is relevant. So how do you apply this in your day-to-day lives? I think there's another set of foundations I put in place then about neutrality, relationships, and benefit, which is creating, a self-made purpose in the world. So these are things that I think we all go through in varying extents, depending how much we like to ask these questions about, what's life about, in a day-to-day and our work lives as well. So I think the it's a lot of theory to cover all in it. Hence why you can probably think that this is why you end up with an 800-page book. And I'm actually quite proud that it's that small. but there's a number of challenges here. I think in terms of addressing this, and it does all actually come back to my day-to-day work as well. One is, how do you find the time? How do you even fund this? If it's such a large exercise, and how do you find the time to even accumulate the knowledge? So I would reach out to yourself and your listeners as well, and say, look, if there's any books that you've read that you really have loved in terms of philosophy, if there's any podcasts, any shows, any movies you've seen, my email address is just Pras, which is Pras.Puri, which is Puri, at gmail.com. Flick me through your suggestions. I'd love to take them all in. Because I feel like I'm in a very fortunate position to be able to have accumulated this knowledge, had the experiences I've had, and now being able to find the time to go and finish this piece of work. I think the second challenge people come across is, the format of how to get it down. So without the advantage of living in a beautiful city like Brisbane and having the time and having excellent people to support me like yourself, Tim, in managing affairs, which
appreciate that, thank you.
which I need some help with, you don't find the time to do this. And I think the largest challenge which exists, even if you're able to manage those two parts, is how do you go against your contemporaries and the knowledge that they have, all the research that's been done, and say, hey, I want to propose something which is a little bit new here. Without being ripped to pieces. So I was traveling. I was in Stockholm once, and they've
beautiful city.
Beautiful city. Have you been to the Nobel Prize Museum there?
No. I was only there for 3 days, but went to the Vassar.
Oh, the Vassar Museum, the large
and the
the
Abbey
boat
Museum.
that they pull it. Yeah, I don't know if the Vassar's actually under repairs at the moment, or
I'm not sure, but it was a couple of 2.5, nearly 3 years. Yeah.
Amazing. In the Nobel Prize Museum, which is very close by, actually. From my memory, which isn't that great.
Well, you'd be right.
Yeah, they there's a quote which is up on the wall there, and it's by an individual named Louis Agassiz. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. It's Agassiz, and he says, every great scientific truth goes through 3 stages. First, people say it conflicts the Bible. Next, they say it had been discovered before. And lastly, they say they always believed it. So this is something that's stuck by me, because it really goes and says, if you are going to propose something new, then how far down this rabbit hole do you have to fall? How much research do you need to do? How are you going to be able to bring it back together? But the way that I kind of see it, Tim, is that if through this it gets to create something which, as one person once said to me, they go and said, this could redirect the course of humanity, well, I'd be happy enough to just go and say it helped 1 or 2 people. I think that makes the whole journey worthwhile for myself. This really does tie back a lot into my day-to-day work as well, which, as you know, is around engineering and consulting and business, and helping there. So I suppose what's kind of happened is, for myself, I've benefited a lot from having this mindset, which I've developed. I've benefited a lot from being able to...
Pre-10 years ago, was the mindset a lot different?
Oh, I think it was significantly different. I probably have been told that I was quite a different person. Neuroplasticity is a big part of neurology, which I think in probably the last 20 or 30 years has become mainstream science. As opposed to other areas which people are still working on. And I think, the ability of a person's body to recover, to change, can actually lead to fundamental changes in who they are as a person. So, I think my mindset, Tim, was I was always asking the questions, but I didn't have a lot of answers. And the struggle there can be, how do you direct yourself? What do you choose as a career? And we get thrown into it, like I imagine some of you guests have said, you get out of high school, for a lot of us, you go straight to uni, you don't know what you're meant to be doing. And the next thing you find is you're in a job. So I found that getting experience early on was actually quite important. I think it's quite important to find your niche as well. But in terms of the engineering consulting work, I suppose you end up picking up skills from a lot of different places. It's just...
So I guess let's talk about the workplaces a little bit that you've sort of worked at. We don't have to sort of go into too much detail here if you don't want to, but... you've worked for, as you said in the earlier piece, Rio Tinto, Essentia, Arrow Energy, a lot of mining industry companies, and you've had good little 2 or 3 year stints, or even 1 or 2 or 3 year stints, learning about how these organisations work, and then using using your own experiences to go in and improve these organisations and get the projects done in the right sort of manner when it comes to your special set of skills. Tell us a couple of lessons that you've learnt sort of working with some of these companies.
Absolutely, Tim. I mean,
Just
I think
a couple.
for myself, it all comes together
Yep.
in terms of my work as well.
Yes.
So the primary thing, and I think there'd be a lot of organizational leaders who would say this to you as well, is organizational culture makes the biggest difference.
Yep.
If you've got people who are willing and want to work and share your common goal, then you're going to be able to get anything done. That's really about providing them with purpose. And as we're talking, the philosophy is actually a lot about purpose.
So purpose and culture are fairly connected.
Yeah, or very much so, because if you wake up in the morning and you feel like going to work, that's great. But if you feel like going to work and you feel like you're achieving something, you're going to want to keep coming back. And I think the purpose component and the cultural component of an organization should always be number one, because with the right people, you can get things to happen. So when you enter large organizations and they've got a variety of things going on, there's silos within there, and you're trying to get your team to achieve something or achieve something as an individual, you really need to know where you're headed, or at least that's my approach. I think my second learning is that, whilst having a technical background and being able to get into that nth level of detail, and my specialty is in cost and planning, has been great. Project management itself requires yourself to gain a variety of technology skills, and then you really end up falling a little bit into that HR and building the team kind of space. I believe the best way to bring it all together is to really go and say, what are you trying to achieve here? So whether it's a large mining project or an organizational transformation, I think it all really comes back to is, what are you trying to achieve? What are the people trying to achieve as individuals? What are the people trying to achieve as group? And how can you bring that all together to make it succeed? Now, you're the expert in numbers, right?
Yeah, I guess,
Yep.
is there a sort of difficulty at all with some of these large organisations as far as the direction that they want to take their companies? I mean, because you've got a lot of, what you sort of, what I tend to see in some of these organisations is there's, a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
I think I'd have to agree with you that it's about then what can you get your own team to achieve as opposed to the organisation
Yeah,
goal.
okay. So
And if your
going back
goals
to a
are
team,
aligned,
yeah.
But to keep it not so fluffy, actually,
Yep.
I was listening to one of your previous episodes, just actually number 58, great episode. With
Was it Peter Lucas?
Peter Lucas,
Yeah.
and he was talking about insolvency and
Yep.
some of the issues which smaller businesses or medium-sized businesses can run into.
Yep.
Right? Great episode. I recommend everyone has a listen to that, actually. And it really spoke to me, because I've seen similar things happening in small businesses, medium businesses, where direction of the organization, what the people want to achieve, what they're trying to do, how the numbers add up at the end of the day, small changes can make a huge difference to the bottom line of the business. So the role that I have to play within an organization, whether it's small or it's large, is utilizing what they have from a technical background, where their IP is, where their skills are, and trying to transform that with more efficiency, in terms of getting the planning right, getting the cost sections of those right, making it sustainable, which is a huge part, not just from an environmental point of view because I'm working in mining, but making the business sustainable, and then actually providing them with a solution. After 1 or
Yep.
2 years, though, I hope my job is done, and
Excellent.
I hand back to the business owners,
And look for the next
and look for the next gig.
next
So
challenge. Yeah.
it's really the transformation space that gets me excited.
Excellent. So tell me, all the things that you've sort of invested in your life. What has been, you think, the best investment for, I guess, the least amount of financial sort of outgoing? That's been the most beneficial to you.
I mean, it might sound a bit cliche, but I think education is probably the best investment for the least amount of outgoing. The reason I say that, Tim, is that I can't recall the person now, but they said education has never been as expensive or as affordable as it is today. So if you want to go out there and seek, you absolutely can. Or if you want to go to a top 10 uni in the world, it's like taking out a second or a third mortgage, I suppose, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I suppose the thing is that if you want to achieve within your career or within your own life, gaining information, being able to empathize with it can really save you a ton of time and allows you to go and say, well, I don't have to experience each and every little thing before I can find the niche that I belong in and where I can serve my greatest purpose. I understand that not everyone sees it that way, but that education or that enjoyment for them can come from their hobbies. It can come from being out in nature, which I certainly love, and you're a nature lover yourself.
Yep.
So one of my, I suppose my guilty pleasures is that when I am traveling, if I'm near the mountains, I love to go snowboarding. I find it so freeing and so enjoyable. And, after that, I'll of course go and do some engineering consulting work for 4 hours, and I'll go and do some writing for 2 hours if I get a chance to get through it that day. And that's a very ideal day, Of course, friends, family, relationships, they're all very important to be able to integrate into this all. And in terms of an investment, I think, Tim, definitely making yourself a better person, more useful to the world is how I see it. But there's nothing wrong with enjoying it either.
Interesting. I've had one person say gym membership was their best investment for the cheapest price. So anyway. But that's health's important as well.
Absolutely.
Now you're fairly well travelled. So whereabouts? I guess whereabouts in the world is your favourite destination or destinations to travel, and where you sort of look where you look forward to going back to?
Oh, absolutely. Tim, I think one of the places which represents a fusion of what I enjoy in terms of work culture, and being in the outdoors, and generally being surrounded by people who say, look, living your own life is great, but what are you going to do beyond that, is Switzerland. I spent a fair bit of time there. It's also quite central in terms of Europe, so it's a great base to travel from. One of my more enjoyable destinations.
So how old were you when the first time you went to Switzerland?
It must have only been about 5 years ago. So, I think...
So fairly new to the place.
Fairly new to the place. But I've made quite a few trips, I think. And the thing is, there is opportunity there to work with international organisations which have this...
Some big companies there as well, businesses.
Yeah, big businesses. From an ethics point of view, I would say, everywhere has their issues. But from a general consensus of what individuals are trying to achieve, because a lot of the rudimentary things like transport, access to common things that people need are taken care of. You can say, hey, in the morning I'm going to get up, I'm going to catch a train and get to work. That's a certainty, which allows you a lot more time to go and say, what am I going to do with myself for the rest of the day? Poor analogy, but I think you understand where I'm coming from.
So when you go there, do you sort of like to sort of spend most of your time out sort of in the mountainous areas, or do you like to still spend time in Zurich?
Well, I think transport-wise, it's quite flexible. So you can get out to the mountains in less than an hour on the train, which is, time I can spend writing, and I really enjoy that. But I think Zurich's a costly city to be in.
It is. It's expensive. Yeah.
It's an interesting city to be in. You actually run into a lot of Australians in Zurich as well. So sometimes when I get a little bit homesick, I'll return there and I'll go to an Australian coffee shop and have a chat and have a bit of yarn with a few people, and then I'm out to the mountains again. Because I think that's where the real joy is for myself. I love walking.
Favourite mountainous or picturesque place in Switzerland?
Well, I suppose if you're going to go to Zermatt, you're going to see the Matterhorn. And it's very picturesque, but I think some of the other ranges, like I've been to this small Italian town a few times called Pontresina, which is still located in Switzerland, and it's very memorable to myself. Scellerino, which is close by, and there's some of the places I learned to snowboard. Lux, Davos.
Have you been to Interlaken?
Oh yeah, I've been to Interlaken. Beautiful, really great spot to connect yourself out to other places. Speaking of technology, actually, I follow one of the hotels there, and they've got a robotic bartender in their hotel now. That's the.
So whereabouts is that?
It's in Interlaken.
In Interlaken.
Yeah, I stayed in this hotel. Lord Byron, the poet.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
So he stayed here once, and they've kept that going, and now they've got a robotic bartender. Don't ask me how it all joins together, but they.
So that's one of your favourite places, Switzerland. Robotics. So robotics is a bit of an interest of yours, isn't it?
Look, I think it used to be. Early in my life, in high school, I was in a robotics competition, and I was teamed up with a bunch of great peers, students, and they've all done really well in their lives, as far as I know. And we were part of a robotics competition. I think it's still going on. It's called RoboCup.
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 Oh, sorry, RoboCup. Yeah.
RoboCop would be really cool, but quite destructive.
Yeah.
No, the idea was they said we're going to build autonomous robots which are going to be able to beat the World Cup team by 2050.
Yep.
So that was the aim. So, they've got a few years up their sleeve, but I think there's a lot of progress to still go there. And I was part of this team, and we went over to Japan to represent our school. And
so you said you've been to Tokyo before?
I haven't been to Tokyo, but I've been to Fukuoka.
Okay.
It's quite small. That's where the competition was, and we actually managed to place first in the world.
Wow.
So,
excellent.
And as a high school student, you're like, is this even real life?
Yeah.
And how do you use that to then go and say, what's your next challenge going to be? But I'd love to travel more to Japan.
Yeah.
I'd also love to go to Canada.
Yeah, I've never been to Canada. That's definitely on most bucket lists if they haven't been there. And you haven't been there either, have you?
I haven't either.
No.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, I've got to get there in the next few years. I'd love to get there. So any other so travelling, that's probably a bit about that. But if there's any other places that stick out, just obviously speak up and tell us. But obviously, yeah, so Canada, definitely.
Yeah.
So robotics was probably more of a hobby back when you were a bit younger. What do you sort of do you have sort of hobbies or sports that you like to get involved in more recent times? Or
Much like your other friend who said the gym membership was quite a good investment.
Yeah.
I live close to the river, so I really enjoy walking along the river. I find that really helps.
Yeah.
Actually, a funny thing, Tim, meditation is something I've taken up recently. And I think I was really cautious about it in the past because I thought, that's just sitting around and doing nothing. But it doesn't really classify as a sport. But I would say it's something I would recommend to people if they're struggling a little bit in terms of managing their time. How often do you find yourself, Tim, last thing you do before you go to bed is checking your phone?
Yeah, well...
Guilty, right?
Well, guilty checking it all bloody day, but anyway.
I mean, you respond to my emails always really quite quickly, which I appreciate. I found myself in this habit where I thought, what I'm probably doing for the last half an hour, 15 minutes of my day is I'm on my phone. And I just found it didn't center me in the point where I'm going and saying, my next day is about what I'm trying to achieve, which is not spending time on my phone again. So maybe the last thing I should do before I go to bed is, I'm very fortunate to be able to do this, but I go and sit by the river, I take that in, and I understand what I'm going to do the next day rather than looking at my phone.
Beautiful, I like that.
Yeah, give it a go, see how you go.
I love that. Brisbane's such a great place to live as the reason you're still living here from younger days.
Yep.
It's and you always sort of, I mean, what is it about Brisbane that's I guess that you just love so much that that this is the place to live predominantly for you? I know you've got other family members that probably are here as well, but tell us about that.
I think, Tim, the city has an appeal that it doesn't have that higher pace. Which allows you to actually have some time for yourself. When I was living in Sydney, I would spend an hour.
You have lived in Sydney?
Yeah, I've lived in Sydney. I've lived in...
How long for?
Well, it's probably about... How long did I survive? Probably about 6 months before I decided I needed to pull the pin on that. Yeah. I moved from there to regional New South Wales, which was Armidale.
Yep.
And I actually spent, I think, probably a good 9 months there, which was also a little bit of a change. But if I had to place Brisbane somewhere, I'd say that it's between the two in terms of its sophistication. Yep. I mean, there's a lot you can do now. Big Sound Festival was just on
I was there
last weekend.
Yep.
Enjoy it?
Yeah, loved it.
Oh, it's great.
It was only probably not previous year went to all 3 days actually, but this time sort of 1.5 days I was there this time around, but got to see Tones and I, which was good.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So, there's a new place opening up all the time here in Brisbane, but it's not even that much of the cultural component. I think that's appealing to myself because you can always go out and travel. But as a city where I felt like when I was out of it, I want to come back here. Yeah. That was my first sense that I ever had.
There's that thinking if I'm going to sort of move away that I'm going to miss you'd miss the place.
Yeah.
What do you think of the new development of Howard Smith Wharves that everyone seems to be sort of congregating to at the moment?
Have you been there yourself?
A few times already.
A few times? Yeah. I love the atmosphere, I got to say.
They've done a great job with it.
Being by the river once again, being able to take in the sunshine, looking over the bridge. I mean, we've got a beautiful day today.
Yep.
So it's just, I think the city's really developed in such a sense that, if you enjoy the outdoors, if you want to be able to still get relatively affordable housing, and you want to set up your own life, it's an excellent place to be. And I mean, after having travelled so much as well, I think I made a fairly conscious choice to remain here. probably 5 years ago, I couldn't say that to you, Tim. I was thinking, oh, you know, maybe I should go and live in Switzerland, or maybe I should go and live somewhere else. But when you look at the balance that the city is able to provide and the opportunities, it's really up to the individual to just go and say, what do I want to do? So, yeah.
So we just talked about big sound. What sort of music interests you? You got sort of any sort of genres that you sort of like to listen to, or artists in particular?
You're probably going to laugh at this, Tim.
No, I'm not going to laugh at all. We don't judge.
I spend a lot of my time at work still, you know, as we all do, and I need to be able to focus in on my planning stuff there.
Yep.
So the less distractions, the better.
Yep.
And I tend to stick to classical music, actually.
Yep, that's fine.
I did a little bit of classical music when I was in high school, and at that time I'd poo-poo it and I'd be like, oh, look, I used to enjoy metal, I used to enjoy rock, I used to enjoy, you know, even listening to a little bit of hip-hop and R&B at that stage. And, you know, whilst I think with Spotify and Apple Music and all these other kind of services, you can get access to this, but...
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You know, I'm a big person who has to see the value in things, right? I think some of the value in that classical music, it has survived, right? But, you know, look, you won't find me listening to it on a Friday night. But
No.
the rest of the time, that. And I really enjoy movie soundtracks.
Okay.
I don't know, there's just
That's
this familiar...
interesting. I like that. That's,
there's a familiarity that you kind of can see the story in your head. You know, I can recommend a few if anyone wants. They can always flick me in.
Give me a couple.
I love the Lord of the Rings soundtracks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because, you know, you got that epic journey which is
Yeah.
going on. Sometimes it's a little bit distracting. You got those classical elements and there's a few more modern things in there. So,
Do you watch many movies as well or not?
I haven't as of late. You know, I think movies probably fall into the same category. It's quite strange saying you're working on a large project, which is all about philosophy and all about writing a book, yet you don't find the time yourself to do your own research. But the model that I'm taking is, I hope at the end of this year, starting around about November, I will have finished off an editing draft. And then I really want to try to consume as much as I can in a short possible time. So the next 2 to 6 months, I want to read, watch as many movies, do whatever I can, so I have enough relevant present knowledge. I listen to a few podcasts around neurology. Some of the stuff is probably too scientific for myself to get my head around, but you can't be an expert in everything.
You can't.
And neither should you try to be, I think, in some cases, when you're forming a new framework. So movies-wise, I haven't seen anything all that recently, but please, you know, if you've got recommendations, you've got to send them over to
I don't
me.
really get to the movies that often. I mean, I'm probably more inclined to sort of see It 2, but I saw the first one, but I know It 2's just come out and people are banging on about that. But
How terrifying it is?
Yeah, it's you know, you've got to have a like for scary movies to an extent that, like, you've got to be able to like the Halloweens
And you do?
I do enjoy that a bit, yeah. I mean,
what does it give you? Does it give you this excitement? Or?
It's just maybe it's just a different way of getting an adrenaline rush. Maybe I think it's you know, I think it's not enough. It's my favourite type of movie, the scary movies, but it just gives you a bit of you know, life. You got to live life a little bit on the edge a little bit sometimes.
So life isn't terrifying enough, is that what you're saying?
Probably not, but in reality it is. So you're obviously, you're obviously fairly good as far as technology and technology minded. You sort of, you've grown up in the era, you know, of Generation Y, I guess, where, you know, technology is big. You know, everyone's got, as I said, we're talking about the iPhone and smartphones and that sort of thing at the moment. What do you have sort of any predictions yourself as to where the next big technology wave is, what that's going to be, or how do you sort of view technology?
Well, I mean, I suppose I can talk about it in terms of my own workplace.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so the major transition in terms of the systems that we've used, I mean, this is the whole thing. Great processes are what allows you to configure systems properly. And then those systems can become quite useful and create efficiency within the business. You would have seen the same thing with Xero, right?
Yep.
But the concept's been around for a long time. It's all about doing it well. And so the transition from in-house hosting to the cloud has been a big change for the industry. Being able to move from, you know, a once-off, you know, $3,500 license to now being able to get a fully fledged enterprise resource planning system like Microsoft Dynamics for like $30 a month. It's quite That's not actually the real cost there, Tim, by the way. I
Yeah.
hope none of your listeners take that on, because the costs are in the implementation of these systems and getting them right. But then
Yep.
the actual ongoing costs of maintaining something like that are significantly lower. So it allows small, medium businesses to get into that large business capability from a technology point of view, because the price is still now a fraction of what it used to be.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge change. I suppose moving on from the cloud and what the next step is,
Yeah.
there's a lot of buzzwords out there in the industry. People love talking about AI and machine learning and whatnot. I think some of them have real credentials. Machine learning definitely does. AI, I still think, is probably a little bit of a buzzword. Now, I
We
might...
sort of grew up at school thinking, AI was sort of, knew, what the theory was
Skynet.
and all of that sort of stuff. And here we are in nearly 2020.
Yeah, and no flying cars.
No flying cars, really.
No, not enough legislation to even get automated cars on the road by the looks of it. I think, Tim, the difficulty, and might not be the most popular opinion, and I'm not that well read about this topic, but I think the difficulty in AI is in being able to understand how humans work versus how machines would work.
Yeah.
And there's people who've done substantial amount of research in how, but one of the key findings that I've had is that our brains are highly inhibitive machines, if I'm able to say that. I mean, there's something that's stopping us right now from doing a number of things like knocking a microphone over, or, when someone annoys us, we don't always slap them in the face, right? So what our brains are telling us most of the time is what not to do as opposed to what to do. And the level of complexity we have,
That's an interesting, I don't really heard that, but that's dead right.
Yeah, so I mean, this is from, of course, neurologists who have taught me this, as opposed to my own knowledge. But I suppose the way that they look at it as well is they'll go and say, okay, and the complexity in our brains is huge. You can have an individual neuron which can have up to 50 connections, 50 synapses, and then they've got multiple methods of communicating through chemicals and through electric connections as well, I should say. So to keep it at a very high level. So what we're actually doing within our brains versus what we're able to do in machines is we're able to do a lot more computations which tell us what's wrong as opposed to what's right. Whereas, I suppose computers and binary-based systems are all about saying, we're trying to get to the correct answer and the correct answer only, and doing that in a really reliable way. So I think the big leap will come in AI when quantum computing becomes a reality, which allows us to have the processing power to go and say, I can run 99 calculations which tell me something's wrong, which means that this is the next most likely probability, as opposed to having to go through the other methods. Machine learning does that a bit with the amount of computing power it has available to itself, but for a practical, real-world application of AI, and what it will actually mean to us, I actually feel like a big component of it is then going to be able to say, okay, well, if we can create something which is at least able to imitate a conscious being, then what purpose does the conscious being have any longer?
Okay. Interesting. So, is anybody, I guess, that stood out to you over the course of your, life, more professional life, I guess, that's been a mentor or a hero to you that you sort of looked up to and sort of got something from?
Tim, I think it'd be highly arrogant and incorrect for me to say that there haven't been a significant number of people who have done that for myself. I remember some of my early bosses. I won't name names there
because
of client confidentiality, but I remember some of my early bosses really helped me in setting direction. Some of them set great examples of what it's like to demonstrate loyalty to an organization and stick with it and go through the hard times. Others showed me what it's like to actually be a fairly hard boss and the kind of people who would take some pleasure, I think, in making some of their employees cry. And the beautiful thing of having been in my career for like just 15 years now, I suppose, is that you're able to see where people end up and what their choices mean in terms of their longevity within organizations, how they go and finding the next job. They've been through a fair few crises, GFC, mining crash twice now, I think. And it's amazing how you see people who look at the situation and say, oh, I can take a good advantage of this now, get myself in a good situation. And it's the same reason there's a downfall and downturn.
Yep.
Which is, but there's been a great number of influences. In more recent times, I worked for a family organization, small family business. And by small, I should probably say they were still trading around the $30 million mark by the time I left. And I came in at around about half of that.
Yep.
the transformation which had to occur within that business and with those individuals was significant. And you learn a lot about, how conservative people can be, how technology affects them. So there's a learning experience everywhere. I won't name specific mentors.
Okay.
Like
Is there any sort of well-known people that you sort of looked up to, that famous people?
I mean, I think, cliche again, but Einstein's always been a great inspiration for me. One of the recent things that, of course, gravitational waves has been a big discovery of his, theory of his, which we've finally managed to prove. The other one was, I think it was this year that they had the first photo of a black hole, right?
Okay.
And, it's done with imaging equipment, which is, I believe, an array of radio telescopes. I love, actually, one of my things that I love is space exploration and the science behind it. But, there's people who have got a wealth of knowledge here, so I won't try to go over theirs. But I think one of the amazing things from a philosophical point of view for me, Tim, was for the longest time we've believed black holes exist. And we've known this. And we are able to theoretically say they do exist. But it's amazing the transformation that occurred when people saw that they can look at a photo of one.
Wow.
So, it's this transition between saying just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there. If you have all the theory behind it, it may as well exist. Yeah.
That's quite interesting. What do you, I always think that there's a bit of philanthropy there, in the way you sort of look at the world. But is there any particular, I guess, charities that are, close to your heart that you like to support more than others?
Absolutely. You had a golf day recently, didn't you?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
And you were supporting
4 different charities.
4 different charities. One of them was MS as well.
Correct. MS Queensland.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, look, I think for myself personally, having seen a lot of things, especially within the mining industry, is I think mental health and focusing on depression and anxiety for individuals, what their work life does to them, getting the balance right in terms of how they feel rewarded, both financially, both in terms of the quality of life that they have, especially when people are working away on site for long periods of time. So I'm passionate about that because, I've seen some people who have taken their lives in the past in terms of how much work has imbalanced them. And just, I think Are You OK Day is coming up, or has been
I can't remember the exact date, but
I'm starting to see a fair few
I think
things
earlier
about it.
this week was World Suicide Prevention Day. I think
Yeah.
it was earlier this week. Former Richmond coach. I think he had a one vehicle car accident this week or earlier this week, which was quite sad. Did suffer from some problems with that sort of thing. But that's obviously important, and I think we're seeing society is definitely seeing a lot more of recognition for mental health. I have clients that that's all they do is dabble in this space as far as predominantly. They've actually got a podcast that's it's called Career and Mental Health Conversations.
Yep.
They do a podcast every week. It was actually Patrick Page. Actually, just got a message from him, who basically told me how to set up a podcast. So,
is that right?
So Patrick Page, hopefully we'll probably get him on my podcast again soon.
Excellent.
And there's obviously charities like Beyond Blue as well.
Black Dog is actually one that I've
been
supporting.
Black Dog, yes, definitely. That's another one that that's great. What I sort of seen with you, I think you speak very well, Pras. Do you have any sort of what are your experiences that you've had in public speaking?
Oh, I mean, Tim, I think honesty is a big thing for me. Having good ethics is a big thing for me, and I like to speak my own truth. I like to speak what I know
which is what people want to hear.
Yeah, what I'm passionate about. I'm a terrible liar. I just cannot deceive people in terms of I'd rather give them the truth in a nice way than trying to lead them incorrectly. So I haven't done a lot of public speaking. I've had to run organizations and manage teams, which means you're doing it on an informal basis quite often. But yeah, I mean, look, it's something I enjoy, but I suppose I'm there for the audience. It's not the other way around. I'm not there to go and preach what I believe in. It's more like, can I benefit someone else? And I think that kind of falls a lot into my work as well. That's why I enjoy these transformation gigs, because it's very much just saying, someone else has spent their life passionately pursuing something, and they're gone through a couple of hard times, or they've had a couple of experiences with management consultants, and they found themselves saying, bloody oath, can we just get someone who actually wants to go and do the job and get it done without trying to give us all the fluff? So that's kind of turned out to be my niche and what I enjoy, and my reward is it gives me back my time to spend my time on the things I enjoy.
Excellent. I guess one of the things I probably want to finish up with, unless there's other things that you wanted to share it as well, but obviously the book is hopefully you will reach a goal in the not too distant future. You will get that completed. Which is going to be interesting. I'd certainly like to read, whether I read the whole book, but certainly read.
You could be part of the peer review group at the start.
Okay, well,
absolutely. If you're going to have the time to do that, give me your perspective before it gets published.
Exactly. Well, quite happy to do that. I don't read as many books as I should, but I do like. I mean, obviously, I like to read. The non-fiction stuff. A lot of the time, fiction. I always have an interest in whether it's someone's biography, whether it's whether it's a book from Mark Manson or I don't all these different sort of books that come out. Tim Ferriss. Sorry,
I was going to say self-help is a huge genres at the moment. Yeah.
Tim Ferriss. I like the way he sort of does things with his books in particular. Have you heard of the 4-Hour Workweek? Have you? I'm sure
I have, but. For your listeners, could you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay. Tim Ferriss he's become, over the last 8 or 9 years, very well known worldwide. He's got his podcast is one of the most listened to podcasts out there, I think. I don't quite listen to it that much anymore, but I do like his books that he's written that are, I guess you could say, his philosophies on work environment. That you outsource everything, all this sort of stuff. 4-Hour Workweek is a good book and then he's got the 4-Hour Body and the 4-Hour. So he's got a couple of different 4-hour books. 4-Hour Chef, I think. But also his Tribe of Mentors. So what he's done is he's got a list of fairly well-known people in at least a third of the instances. Like if you have a look at his contents list of people that he's spoken to in Tribe of Mentors or Tools of Titans is the other one. They're very similar in the way those two books are put together, and they're really thick, 600 pages maybe. But it's like a third of the people you just know. It's a famous actor, it's a sports professional, it's somebody that he's had in his little studio, just like a studio. And he's obviously got a story, and he's got 5 or 6 takeaways from each person and just whacked them into a few pages. And that's how he's sort of done his book. So Tim Ferriss, quite interesting. But where I was sort of going was after the book. I guess what's the future look like for Pras Puri? What do you think? Can you see over what's beyond the book?
I think, Tim, it's a question I ask myself quite often. The major aim is to get it done and see if I can get it published. And, it's interesting we're talking about these authors who have been quite successful because they've had to pick a genre and go and cater towards that audience. So I want to keep myself quite pure to my content and do this individually, but I don't exactly want to go down the self-publishing point of view. I just don't think you get the reach that, someone who's completely unknown would like to get. So, if there was an opportunity for myself to continue to help others in the capacity that I have, I would love to do that. Whether it could turn into a full-time thing, I don't know yet. But I think right now, if I put a significant amount of effort into what I'm doing, I try to do it right. And once again, I come back to, you've given me a few recommendations there straight away. So the topic I'm trying to cover off, of course, is a general theory of philosophical consciousness. That's the name of the book as well. I've got an Instagram page running, which is just called the General Theory of Philosophy.
That's an Instagram page.
I haven't used it for quite some time, but if there's a few more people on there having a look, I'll definitely post up something once every couple of weeks. And I think the thing for me, Tim, is that I would love to continue down this pathway I'm going down right now. Keep myself settled in Brisbane. continue traveling, and of course continue on with my consulting work. What I would, I suppose, perceive as a real future goal for myself is being able to make a little bit more of a more significant difference to the world. A more significant difference through the things that I do understand. And sorry if I'm repeating myself here, but I found in business and in my professional business and in my writing as well that when people identify things which they're passionate about, they can live very purposeful, happy day-to-day lives. Sometimes they're completely unaware that this is going on once they've headed down the path. So having seen a lot of things, I'd like to guide the world in that direction if I have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah. No, I think never sell yourself short, Pras. I think, during your time in the workplace and during, what you'll end up doing here with this book is you will be affecting, you've affected a significant amount of people in the workplace from lots of different organisations. You've, probably in most cases, in every, not every case is different, but a lot of cases you help people. You've helped organisations improve their processes. You've re-engineered some stuff, I'm sure.
Yes.
You've done, change management, mining industry projects, and getting those companies into a direction. As you said, you should look back on your work and say, okay, I helped that company for 2 years or whatever it was, and I know that I've affected these many people and I've improved all these processes. I've achieved what I set out to achieve there. There's always another challenge that I'm going to be able to thrust my, unique set of skills into.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. That's excellent advice from yourself, actually, even. An excellent reflection. I really appreciate that. I think for myself, giving to the community, like you said, and looking for that next challenge. And I suppose the reason I continue with my philosophy work is it's the biggest system of all, to go and try to provide an answer to.
Excellent.
So
it's great to have you on the podcast. It's been a little time coming, but thanks for listening to the episodes of the podcast as well. And I think it's been quite good, and I'd like to share this around to whoever you want.
Thank you very much,
as
Tim.
well. Share that to all the people that you know, and get it out there. I certainly will try my best as well to see to get some people listening to this as well. But it was very, very interesting chat with you today, Pras. Appreciate you coming in very early on Thursday, the 12th of September 2019. I didn't say the date at the start. I usually do, but that's where we are today.
Episode 61 as well, Tim, and congratulations on continuing with this for so long. Thank you very much for having me on the show. And once again, my email address is Pras, which is pras.puri, which is puri@gmail.com. Please send me through any recommendations you have, and I've gotten a few good ones from you already today.
Thank you very much.
Tim.
Cheers.